Meaning of poverty. People living in poverty are those who do not have the financial resources or other necessities to live up to the basic minimum of society. It is the most difficult challenge that India has faced since becoming independent. Approximately 270 million or 27 crore people live in poverty in India, according to the Poverty Report 2011 to 12. Thus, India has the highest concentration of poor people in any one country anywhere on the planet. Poverty as seen by social scientists. Aside from income and consumption levels, social scientists look at a variety of other indicators to determine poverty. These indicators are literacy level. Malnutrition has resulted in a general lack of resistance, inadequate access to medical care, a scarcity of employment opportunities, lack of access to sanitation facilities and safe drinking water, among other things. Two typical cases of poverty. The two cases that follow demonstrate the many aspects of poverty, including a lack of adequate food, shelter, healthcare, education, as well as access to clean water and sanitation facilities. They also show lack of a regular means of livelihood. Urban case. Ramcharan works as a daily wage laborer in a flour mill near Ranchi in the Indian state of Jharkhand. When he is employed, he makes approximately 1,500 per month. He provides for his family of 6 people as well as sending money to his elderly parents. His wife, Shanta Devi, works as a part-time maid and earns a monthly salary of 800. His older son is also employed and earns a salary of 300. None of his 4 children, ranging in age from 12 years to 6 months, are able to attend school. The family is housed in a one-room rented apartment in the city's outskirts. The younger children are malnourished as is the rest of the family. They have very few articles of clothing and footwear, as well as no access to healthcare. Rural case. Lakha Singh is from a small village near the city of Meerut in the state of Uttar Pradesh. Due to the fact that his family does not own land, they work odd jobs for large farmers, earning a total of 50 per day. They may receive a food grain or other item in lieu of cash on rare occasions. Lakha Singh is illiterate and his family of 8 people lives in a kacha hut on the outskirts of the village, just outside the city limits. They do not have access to healthcare and they are unable to purchase new clothes or even soap or oil. These two typical cases illustrate the many aspects of poverty that exist. They demonstrate that poverty is accompanied by hunger and a lack of shelter. Furthermore, it is a situation in which parents are unable to send their children to school and in which sick people are unable to afford medical treatment. Poverty is also associated with a lack of access to safe drinking water and sanitation facilities. Moreover, it implies the absence of a regular job at a minimum respectable level. Poor people are in a position where they are mistreated almost everywhere they go, including firms, factories, government offices, hospitals, and railway stations, among other places. These two cases exemplify Mahatma Gandhi's assertion that India will achieve true independence only when the poorest sections of the country are free of human misery. Indicators for poverty. The indicators of social exclusion and vulnerability are the most frequently used in poverty analysis. Social exclusion. According to this concept, poverty is defined as the condition of those who are poor and who live in a poor environment surrounded by other poor people. They are denied the opportunity to participate in social equality. The caste system in India is based on the exclusion of certain groups from society. People who belong to a particular caste were denied access to the same facilities, benefits, and opportunities as everyone else. More poverty resulted as a result of this than from the lower income. Vulnerability. It is a measure that describes the greater likelihood of certain communities or individuals becoming or remaining impoverished in the foreseeable future. Members of a backward caste or individuals with special needs, such as widows or physically handicapped people, are examples. It is influenced by the various options available to different communities in terms of assets, education, employment, health, and other factors, among others. Furthermore, the ability of these communities to deal with various risks, such as natural disasters like earthquakes, tsunamis, terrorism, and other threats, is taken into consideration. Vulnerable groups are defined as those who are at greater risk during a natural disaster or disaster relief effort. Poverty line. The poverty line is an imaginary line that is used to estimate the level of poverty in a country. It differs from one country to the next. Poverty in a country is measured by the level of income or consumption. It means that people will be considered poor if their income or consumption level falls below a minimum level that is required to meet their basic needs. Poverty line estimation in India. In India, a minimum level of food requirement, as determined by its calorific value, clothing, footwear, fuel, lighting, educational and medical requirements, among other things, is determined in order to estimate the poverty line. When estimating the poverty line, the food requirement is based on the desired calorie requirement. Caloric requirements are met by a combination of food items such as cereals, pulses, vegetables, milk, oil, sugar, and so on. Every person's calorie requirements vary depending on their age, gender, and the type of work they do. In India, the calorie requirement per person per day in rural areas is 2400 calories, and in urban areas it is 2100 calories. Periodically, the money value required to purchase these calorie requirements in the form of food grains and other items is revised in response to increases in the price of these goods. A person's poverty line was set at rupees 816 per month in rural areas and rupees 1000 per month in urban areas in the fiscal year 2011 to 12. The poverty line will be defined as a family of 5 members earning less than 4080 per month in rural areas and less than 5000 per month in urban areas in 2011 to 12. Organizations involved in estimating poverty line. The National Sample Survey Organization NSSO conducts surveys in India to determine where the poverty line should be drawn. NSSO. It was founded in the year 1950. A uniform standard method is used by international organizations such as the World Bank for determining the poverty line in different countries and for comparing the results of different countries. According to this method, the poverty line is defined as the level of minimum availability of the equivalent of $1.9 per person per day for a family of 3. Poverty trends in India. In India, poverty ratios have decreased from approximately 45% in 1993 to 94 to 37.2% in 2004 to 2005, indicating a downward trend. In 2011 to 12, the proportion of people living below the poverty line decreased even further to approximately 22%. If the current trend continues, the proportion of people living below the poverty line could fall to less than 20% within a few years. During the preceding 2 decades, the proportion of people living in poverty decreased significantly 1973 to 1993. There were 407 million poor people in 2004 to 2005, but only 270 million in 2011 to 12, according to the World Bank. Between 2004 to 2005 and 2011 to 2012, an average annual decline of 2.2 percentage points was recorded. Group vulnerable to poverty. Throughout the India, poverty levels differ significantly between different social groups and economic categories. Scheduled caste and scheduled tribes are social groups that are particularly vulnerable to poverty. Rural agricultural labor households and urban casual labor households are 2 of the economic groups that are particularly vulnerable to poverty. Except for the scheduled tribes group, all of these groups have seen a decrease in poverty over the last few years, with the exception of the scheduled tribes. With regard to the members of poor families, there is a great gap. Women, infants, and elderly members of poor families are not given equal access to the resources available to the family, as has been observed in some studies. As a result, they are sometimes referred to as the poorest of the poor. The average for people living below the poverty line across all groups in India is 22 out of 100. The scheduled tribes, on the other hand, are unable to meet their basic needs in 43 out of every 100 people. In a similar manner, 34% of casual workers in urban areas live below the poverty line. Approximately 34% of casual labor form in rural areas and 29% of scheduled caste are also in poverty, according to the World Bank. Interstate disparities. Every state has a different proportion of poor people than the other states. According to 2011 to 12 estimates, the HCR head count ratio for the entire country was 21.9%. States such as Madhya Pradesh, Assam, Uttar Pradesh, Bihar, and Odisha had poverty levels that were higher than the national average. Bihar and Odisha remain the two poorest states in the country, with poverty rates of 33.7% and 32.6% respectively in both states. In addition to these states, rural urban poverty is prevalent in Odisha, Madhya Pradesh, Bihar, and Uttar Pradesh. The states that have been successful in reducing poverty have used a variety of approaches to do so. Some examples are: a high agricultural growth rate in Punjab and Haryana has traditionally resulted in significant reductions in poverty in these states. Kerala has placed a greater emphasis on human resource development. Land reform measures in West Bengal have contributed to the reduction of poverty. The public distribution system of food grains in Andhra Pradesh and Tamil Nadu may have played a role in alleviating poverty. Global poverty scenario. When it comes to different countries, the international poverty line is used to determine the proportion of people living in poverty in each country. According to the World Bank, extreme economic poverty has decreased worldwide from 36% in 1990 to 10% in 2015. But there are still significant regional differences. These are: poverty is declining in Southeast Asia and China as a result of rapid economic growth and massive investment in human resource development, according to the World Bank. According to official statistics, the proportion of poor people has decreased from 88.3% in 1981 to 14.7% in 2008 to 0.6% in 2019. In countries in South Asia, such as India, Pakistan, Sri Lanka, Nepal, Bangladesh, and Bhutan, the decline has also been rapid, with the percentage dropping from 34% in 2005 to 15.2% in 2014. With the decline in the percentage of the poor, the number of the poor has also decreased significantly from 510.4 million in 2005 to 274.5 million in 2013, a decrease of nearly 40% from 2005 to 2013. Poor people in sub-Saharan Africa have seen their poverty levels drop from 51% in 2005 to 40.2% in 2018. Latin America has also seen a decrease in the ratio of poverty, which has decreased from 10% in 2005 to 4% in 2018. Poverty has also been observed to resurface, appear again, in some former socialist countries such as Russia, where it had previously been declared to be non-existent by the government. All forms of poverty are to be eliminated by 2030. According to the United Nations New Sustainable Development Goals (SDGs), causes of poverty in India. Poverty continues in India for many reasons, which are: during the British colonial period, the level of economic development was relatively low. Moreover, they stifled traditional handicrafts and industrial development, thereby decreasing employment opportunities and income growth. The low level of economic development persisted for many years after independence. And as a result of population growth, the rate of per capita income growth was low, contributing to the spread of poverty in the country. Agricultural opportunities were improved as a result of the Green Revolution, but only in specific areas of the country. The increase in the number of people seeking work increased the number of people living in poverty, which exacerbated the situation. Extra expenditure is a result of socio-cultural, that is, traditions, and economic factors which ultimately contributes to increased poverty. There is an unequal distribution of land and other resources which contributes to the large income disparities that exist as well. Land reforms have not been properly implemented, and a lack of sufficient land resources is also a contributing factor to the plight of many people. Small farmers borrow money for seeds, fertilizers, pesticides, and other agricultural inputs and then fail to pay back, resulting in a debt trap. As a result of this high level of indebtedness, poverty is both a cause and an effect. Anti poverty measures in India. The removal of poverty has long been regarded as one of the most important goals of Indian development strategy. The current anti poverty strategy of the government is based on following two objectives: promotion of economic growth. During the last few years, the government has actively encouraged economic growth. Although economic growth was modest up until the 1980s, it has accelerated significantly since then, resulting in a significant reduction in poverty levels. Between economic growth and poverty reduction, there is a strong linkage established. Economic growth broadens, increases the scope or area of available opportunities, and provides the resources necessary to invest in human development initiatives. People are more likely to send their children to school, including the girl child, when the economy is doing well, in the hope of reaping greater economic benefits from their investment in education. It is possible that the poor will not benefit directly from economic growth. A large number of people in rural areas remain impoverished as a result of the lack of growth in the agricultural sector. Targeted anti poverty programs. Beginning in 1990, the government began implementing targeted anti poverty initiatives. As a result of inadequate implementation and targeting, the outcomes of these programs have been inconsistent. Additionally, some schemes overlap with others. As a result, the benefits of these programs are not reaching the deserving poor to their full extent. As a result, the government is placing a greater emphasis on the proper monitoring of all of these programs. Some important programs. Prime Minister Rozgar Yojana. It was first introduced in 1993. The program's overall goal is to provide self employment opportunities for educated unemployed youth in rural and small town areas across the country. They are assisted in the establishment of small business and industries. Rural Employment Generation Program. It was first introduced in 1995. The program's goal is to provide self employment opportunities in rural and small town areas. The 10th 5-year plan has set a goal of creating 25 lakh new jobs, which will be achieved through the implementation of the program. Swarna Jayanti Gram Swarajgar Yojana. It was first introduced in 1999. Self-help groups are being formed to assist the poor families who have been assisted in raising themselves above the poverty line. Pradhan Mantri Gramadaya Yojana. It first appeared on the market in 2000. State governments receive additional central assistance under this program for basic services such as primary health care, elementary education, rural shelter, and drinking water distribution, as well as rural electrification. Mahatma Gandhi National Rural Employment Guarantee Act. It was first introduced in 2005. It aims to provide every household with 100 days of wage employment in order to ensure livelihood security in rural areas. Drought, deforestation, and soil erosion were all addressed as part of the effort to achieve sustainable development. Women have been allocated one third of the proposed jobs under the MGNREGA program. The proportion of SC, ST, and female participants in this scheme is 23%, 17%, and 53% respectively. The challenges to poverty reduction. Due to the wide disparities between rural and urban areas as well as between different states, poverty reduction remains a major challenge in India. Also included in the definition of poverty should be other factors such as education, healthcare, shelter, job security, gender equality, dignity, and so on. They are responsible for instilling the concept of human poverty in us. In the next 10 to 15 years, it is expected that poverty reduction will be less pronounced. In addition to anti-poverty measures, government should focus on the following to reduce poverty: economic growth that is higher. Elementary education is provided at no cost to all students. The population is growing at a slower rate. Empowerment of women and weaker sections.